Mom's blood sugar dropped. Jake screamed into his phone, his voice cracking like he'd just witnessed a car crash. I was standing in the middle of our kitchen, grocery bags still in my hands, the ones I'd just bought with my own paycheck from the dental clinic where I worked 60-hour weeks. He was already shoving past me toward the door, his face pale, completely ignoring the fact that I'd spent 3 hours meal planning and shopping for our engagement dinner this Saturday. That was the moment I should have seen it coming. That split second when he looked at his mother's name on his phone screen, and I became invisible. But I didn't see it then. I was still living in the version of our story where Jake loved me more than anyone else, where our wedding in 8 months meant something real to him. Let me back up. 3 years ago, when Jake first asked me out at that coffee shop on 5th and Main, I thought I'd won the lottery. I really did. My name is Ashley Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in suburban Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew your business and your parents' divorce became public property by Thursday afternoon. My mom cleaned houses for a living, and my dad was mostly absent. So when I turned 18, I made a decision. I would build something solid, something real. No drama, no chaos, no men who couldn't show up. I went to community college, got my dental hygiene certification, and built a reputation at Bright Smile Dental as the most reliable person on staff. Dr. Patterson trusted me with the difficult patients. I had regulars who specifically requested me. I made decent money, around $52,000 a year, and I owned a small one-bedroom condo in a decent part of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The mortgage was manageable, my credit score was solid at 742, and I had actual savings. For someone whose childhood was held together with duct tape and prayers, this felt like I'd climbed Everest. Then Jake walked into my life. He was handsome in that effortless way, 6'2", dark hair, the kind of smile that made women forget their own names. He had a job as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company, made decent money, drove a BMW that was only 2 years old. When he told me he came from a good family, had close relationships with his parents, I felt something click into place. Finally, I'd found the thing I'd been searching for my whole life. Someone stable, someone with roots, someone whose family actually showed up. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. He took me to the Hilton downtown, got down on one knee with a 1.3-carat diamond that probably cost him 4 months' salary. I cried. I actually cried happy tears for the first time since I was a child. My best friend Megan was there, hiding in the corner with her phone camera, and when she came out and hugged me, I felt complete. "I can't wait for you to officially be part of the family," Jake had whispered, kissing my forehead. That should have been my second red flag. Who says that? Officially be part of the family? But I was too happy to notice. The first year of engagement was beautiful. We went to look at venues together. I dragged him to 3 different florists. We argued, good arguments, about whether the ceremony should be traditional or modern. His mother Karen seemed warm enough during the few times I saw her. She complimented my dress sense. She asked about my job. She even offered to help with wedding planning, which I politely declined, because I wanted this to be something Jake and I created together. His father, Michael, was quieter, but kind. They lived in a sprawling 4-bedroom home in the nicer part of town, about 20 minutes from my condo. Jake had a younger sister, Jennifer, who was in law school and mostly ignored me, but that felt normal enough. Everything felt normal. Jake moved into my condo about 14 months ago, right after my lease situation changed, and we figured it made financial sense to consolidate. He kept his apartment for another 6 months, said he needed time to officially move his stuff, but he was essentially living with me. We split groceries roughly in half. He paid for date nights. We talked about where we'd look for a house after the wedding. He seemed excited about our future. He'd kiss me in the morning before work. He'd text me funny memes during the day. He'd come home and tell me about his meetings, and I'd tell him about the root canals and crown work I'd done. I thought we were building something. But looking back now, I can see the pattern I completely missed. Every single time his mother called, something shifted in his energy. She called frequently, at least 3 times a week, and Jake would always answer, no matter what we were doing. We could be in the middle of dinner, and if Karen called, he'd take it. I never complained because my own mother rarely called, and I saw it as a sign of a healthy family. What did I know? I was working from a deficit. Then, about 6 months ago, something changed. Karen called one evening while Jake and I were watching a movie. He answered, of course. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice immediately shifting into a tone I'd never heard him use with me. Softer, more deferential, more loving. I paused the movie and started scrolling on my phone to give him privacy, but I could hear her voice coming through the speaker, loud, demanding, something about a dinner party she was hosting and how she needed him to help coordinate. "Yeah, Mom, I can help," Jake said. "Ashley and I don't have plans that day, so—" "Don't make promises about Ashley's time," Karen interrupted, her voice sharp as a knife. "You don't speak for her." I looked up, surprised by the hostility. Jake caught my eye and gave me an apologetic shrug, then turned away from me as he continued the conversation. That was the third red flag, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Karen was just protective. Maybe she worried about losing her son to his fiancée. These things happened. I'd read articles about it. Over the next few months, the pattern intensified. Jake started helping his mother with more things. Small things at first. Picking up groceries for her, helping her with her car maintenance, fixing things around the house. Then bigger things. He'd spend entire Saturdays at their place instead of with me. When I mentioned it, he'd say, "My parents need me, Ashley. Is that a problem?" How could I say yes? How could I be the woman who tried to separate a man from his family? So I said nothing. And that's when Jake started asking me for things. "Could you help me pay for Mom's new kitchen tiles? She's having the kitchen redone, and Dad's bonus got delayed." I helped. It was $3,500, but we were getting married anyway, right? It felt like helping family. Then, "Could you lend me $5,000 for my parents' property taxes? They're in a tight spot." I lent it. He promised to pay me back within 6 months. Then, "My mom's car needs new brakes and tires. She's worried about driving in winter. Could we cover it?" We covered it. That was another $2,000. 3 months before our wedding, when the final payments were due for the venue, the caterer, the photographer, Jake told me he didn't have the money. His savings were depleted. Could I cover it? It was only $8,000, and we were supposed to split the costs. But he explained that his family had been going through some financial stress, and he'd been helping them out. He'd pay me back after our honeymoon, he promised. I covered it. That was the night I should have ended things. That was the night I should have looked at him across our kitchen table and said, "This isn't working. You're not the man I thought you were." But I didn't. I had a wedding planned for 8 months away. I had a white dress hanging in my closet. I had told everyone I knew that I was finally getting my happy ending. So instead, I said, "Okay, but Jake, we need to talk about boundaries with your family." He nodded. He agreed. He said he'd handle it better going forward. And for about 2 weeks, things seemed to improve. He was more attentive. He focused on me. He didn't answer every call from his mother immediately. Then one evening, about 3 weeks ago, I came home from a double shift at the dental clinic. My feet were killing me. I dealt with 3 emergency root canals, 2 difficult extractions, and a patient who'd yelled at me about her insurance coverage. I was exhausted. I wanted to collapse on the couch with a glass of wine and maybe some Thai food. Jake was already home, which was unusual. He normally worked until 6, and it was only 5:30. He was on the couch, his laptop open, and he looked stressed. Really stressed. Like the kind of stress where your jaw clenches and your shoulders live up by your ears. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Rough day?" He didn't answer immediately. He closed his laptop slowly, like he was buying time, and then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. It was fear. Pure, naked fear. "We need to talk," he said. And that's when everything started to fall apart. "We need to talk," he said, and my stomach dropped like I'd just missed a step going downstairs. I sat down slowly on the armchair across from him, still in my clinic scrubs. "Okay, what's going on?" Jake ran his hand through his hair, and I noticed his hands were shaking, actually shaking. "My mom called me today, at work. She was crying, Ashley, actually crying." Here we go, I thought. Here's where I find out his mother had some kind of health scare, and I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks listening to Jake worry about her while ignoring me. What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. She said she can't keep pretending everything's fine anymore. She said she needed to be honest with me about Dad. I waited. Jake stared at his hands like they held the answers to the universe. My parents' finances are in complete collapse, Ashley. Completely underwater. My dad made some really bad investment decisions about 5 years ago. Lost almost everything. They've been hiding it from everyone. Maxing out credit cards, taking out loans against the house, borrowing from friends. Mom said they're about 3 months away from losing the house, if something doesn't change. The words didn't make sense at first. Jake's parents had that beautiful 4-bedroom home. They drove nice cars. Karen wore designer clothes. Michael belonged to a country club. How could they be? And then it hit me like a slap across the face. The money, I said quietly, all the money you've been asking me for, that's been for them. Jake wouldn't meet my eyes. That was confirmation enough. Jake, how much? My voice came out smaller than I intended. How much have I given you? He finally looked at me. His expression was a mixture of shame and something else, something that looked almost like resentment. About $18,000 over the last 8 months, plus the wedding expenses. $18,000, plus the wedding. I did the math in my head. $26,000, nearly half of my annual salary. Money I'd saved, money I'd planned to use for a down payment on a house after we got married. Money that was supposed to be part of our future. You lied to me, I said. It wasn't a question. I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you the full truth. That's the same thing, Jake. He stood up and started pacing. You don't understand what it's like. These are my parents. I couldn't just watch them lose everything. What was I supposed to do? Let them become homeless? Let my mom lose the only house she's ever loved? You were supposed to be honest with me. I stood up too, my voice rising. You were supposed to say, hey Ashley, my family is in financial crisis, and I need to help them. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how it affects us. You were supposed to give me a choice. I knew what you'd say. I knew you'd judge me for helping my family. I'm not judging you for helping your family, Jake. I'm furious that you stole from me, because that's what this is. You took my money under false pretenses. You asked me to help with property taxes and car repairs, when really you were funding your mother's lifestyle. That's not fair. Isn't it? I was shaking now, adrenaline coursing through my veins. How much have you actually paid toward the wedding? How much of that $8,000 that I covered, our wedding, Jake, the one that's supposed to be about us, how much did you actually contribute? He didn't answer. 0, I said. You contributed 0, while asking me to fund your parents' life. Jake's face flushed red. You know what? Maybe I made a mistake trusting you with this. Maybe I should have known you'd be selfish about it. That word hung in the air between us like poison. Selfish? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. For not wanting to bankroll your family? For expecting my fiancé to be honest with me about where our money is going? My family needed me. I'm going to be your family, Jake. In 8 months, I'm going to be your wife, and you've already shown me that you'll lie to my face, take my money, and call me selfish when I object. So what does that tell me about our marriage? He didn't have an answer for that either. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend Megan. I need you to come pick me up, I said when she answered. My place, now. What, Ashley, what happened? I'll explain when you get here, just come. I hung up and looked at Jake. I'm going to stay at Megan's tonight. I need to think. Ashley, come on, let's talk about this. We just did, and I don't like what I'm hearing. Megan arrived 20 minutes later, taking one look at my face and not asking questions until we were in her car. Then the whole story poured out. The money, the lies, the resentment in his voice when he'd called me selfish. Oh my God, Megan said, gripping the steering wheel. Oh my God, Ashley, how long has this been going on? I don't even know anymore. At least 8 months, maybe longer. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. He lied to you. There's a difference. At Megan's apartment, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called my mother. My mom had never been warm, but she was practical. When I told her what had happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Honey," she finally said, "I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me when I was your age. When a man shows you who he is, believe him, the first time. Jake just showed you that he'll prioritize his family over you, that he'll lie to your face, and that he'll call you selfish for having boundaries. That's not going to change after you marry him. It's going to get worse." I cried that night, real, ugly crying, the kind where your whole body shakes and you can't catch your breath. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I'd never felt before. I called Dr. Patterson at the dental clinic and told him I needed the day off. Then I called a family law attorney named David Chen, whose number I'd saved months ago, just in case, though I'd never really believed I'd need it. David had an opening that afternoon. I sat across from him in his downtown office, surrounded by case files and diplomas, and laid out everything. The money Jake had asked for, the wedding expenses I'd covered, the engagement ring, which I still owned technically. "Here's the thing," David said, leaning back in his chair. "You're not married yet. Legally, you have more flexibility than you might think. Any money you gave him is gifts, and that's how the law will see it unless you have written agreements saying otherwise. Those are gifts. You can't recover them. However, if you can demonstrate that money was given under fraudulent pretenses, or if there are any written communications showing he misrepresented how the money would be used, that might give us something." My heart sank. "So I just lose the $18,000? Unless you can prove fraud. Do you have any text messages or emails where he explicitly lied about what the money was for?" I thought back. Most of our conversations had been verbal. He'd ask me for money. I'd ask what it was for, he'd tell me a lie, and I'd send it. But there were a few texts, a few emails. I went through my phone with David, showing him the messages. One stood out. From 3 months ago, Jake had texted, "Mom needs help with her property taxes. Can you cover it this month? I'll pay you back when my bonus comes through. Love you." The bonus had come through. He'd never paid me back. And his mother's property taxes had actually been credit card payments, based on what he'd told me last night. "This helps," David said, making notes. "It shows a pattern of misrepresentation." "What about the wedding expenses?" "Those are trickier. If you can prove that you paid for them with the understanding that he would reimburse you, and that you made that clear to him, then we have ground to stand on. Do you have any communications about that?" I did. I had an email chain with the venue coordinator where I'd CC'd Jake and written, "I'm covering this now, but Jake will reimburse me before the wedding as discussed." Jake had never objected to that email. He'd just never followed through. David nodded slowly. "Okay, here's what I think we should do. First, I want you to document everything. Write down every payment, every date, every conversation you remember about these funds. Second, gather all your communications, texts, emails, the works. Third, I'm going to send Jake a formal letter requesting repayment of the funds you provided under false pretenses. If he doesn't respond or refuses, we have options." "Like what?" "Like small claims court. Or we negotiate a settlement as part of your engagement dissolution agreement." The word dissolution felt final, permanent, real. I left David's office with a folder full of documents and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since before I met Jake. For the first time, I wasn't trying to smooth things over or find a way to make it work. I was protecting myself. That evening, I sent Jake a text. "I'm staying at Megan's for a while. I need space to figure out what I want." He responded immediately. "Ashley, please, can we talk? I'm sorry, I made a mistake." I didn't respond. The next morning, David sent a formal letter to Jake. I had copies made and kept them in a file. The letter outlined every payment I'd made, every misrepresentation Jake had made about how that money would be used, and requested repayment in full within 30 days, or we would pursue the matter through small claims court. Jake called me immediately when he received it. "Are you serious right now? You're hiring a lawyer against me? We're getting married in 7 months." "Not anymore," I said quietly. "I'm calling the venue today to cancel." "Ashley, no, please don't do this. Let me explain to my family. Let me work something out." You had 8 months to work something out, Jake. Instead, you lied to me, took my money, and then had the audacity to call me selfish when I objected. I'm done. My mom is going to have a breakdown when she finds out. She's already so stressed about the money situation. And there it was, the thing that should have ended this conversation weeks ago. His mother's stress was more important than my financial security. His mother's feelings mattered more than my trust. That's not my problem anymore, I said, and I hung up. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Jake called constantly. He came by Megan's apartment and waited in the lobby until I agreed to talk to him. He promised to pay me back everything. He promised to set boundaries with his mother. He promised to go to couples counseling. He promised. But here's what he didn't do. He didn't actually pay me back. Not a single dollar. Instead, his mother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Ashley, this is Karen," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I wanted to reach out to you personally." "Hi, Karen. I'm sure Jake has explained our family situation to you. We're going through some financial difficulties, and Jake's been so generous in helping us. But I'm concerned that you're not being supportive of him during this time. Family is so important." I felt my blood pressure spike. "Karen, Jake lied to me about where the money was going. He told me it was for property taxes and car repairs. He didn't tell me it was going to cover your credit card bills." There was a pause. "Well, he was trying to be respectful of our privacy. He shouldn't have had to explain our family situation to you." "He shouldn't have had to lie about it," I countered, "and he shouldn't have asked me to fund it." "You're his fiancé. It's your responsibility to support him." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "No, Karen, it's not. My responsibility is to myself, and right now, my responsibility to myself is to not marry a man who lies to me and steals from me to fund his mother's lifestyle." "You're being very selfish and ungrateful, Ashley. Jake has tried so hard to make you feel like part of this family, and this is how you repay him? By not giving him $26,000 that he lied about? Yeah, that's exactly how I repay him." I hung up. I blocked her number, and then I blocked Jake's number too. 3 weeks later, Jake's response came through David Chen's office. His parents had hired their own attorney, a woman named Linda Rothschild, who specialized in family law, and they were contesting the demand for repayment. According to their letter, all the money Jake had asked me for had been gifts. Gifts, by definition, could not be recovered. As for the wedding expenses, they argued that since Jake and I were no longer getting married, those expenses were moot. David and I met again. He laid out our options. "We can push forward with small claims court, but I'll be honest with you, Ashley, it's going to be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. You'll have to testify. Jake will have to testify. His parents might be involved, and there's no guarantee we'll win, especially on the larger amounts." "What about the venue money, the caterer, the photographer? Those are clearer cases of fraud. If you have written evidence that Jake agreed to reimburse you, we have a shot. But the other money, the loans to his parents, those are murkier legally." I sat with that for a moment. The thought of dragging this through court, of having to face Jake and his family in a legal proceeding, made me want to throw up. But the thought of letting them get away with it made me even sicker. "Let's fight," I said, "for the wedding expenses at least. Let's make them explain to a judge why Jake promised to pay me back and then didn't." David nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The small claims court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I threw myself into work. I picked up extra shifts. I joined a gym. I went to therapy, something I should have done years ago. Dr. Morrison, my therapist, helped me understand why I'd been so willing to overlook Jake's lies and his prioritization of his mother. "You grew up without a stable father figure," she explained. "So when Jake presented himself as someone with strong family ties, someone who was dependable and responsible, you saw that as a sign of stability. You didn't recognize that his dependence on his mother was actually a red flag. It felt familiar because your own family was chaotic, and his family seemed so organized, even if that organization was built on lies." It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was true. The week before the court date, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Michael, Jake's father. "Ashley, this is Michael Hartwell, Jake's father. I wanted to talk to you about this lawsuit situation." "I'm not sure there's anything to talk about," I said carefully. "I know my wife has handled this badly. She's stressed and she lashes out. But I want you to know that I take responsibility for our financial situation. I made bad decisions, and I'm ashamed that Jake got caught in the middle of it." I felt a small flicker of something. Empathy, maybe, or just surprise that Michael was being honest. "The thing is," he continued, "Jake is my son. I love him. But I also know that he made mistakes in how he handled this situation with you. He should have been honest with you. He should have asked you directly if you were comfortable helping us, instead of lying about where the money was going." "He should have," I agreed. "I'm calling because I want to ask you to consider settling, not because I think you're wrong, but because I think it's the right thing to do for everyone involved. Linda, our attorney, she thinks we have a good case in court, but I don't want to put my family through that, and I don't think you want to go through it either." He was right. I didn't. "What are you proposing?" I asked. "I want to repay you, all of it, the $18,000 to my family, plus the $8,000 for the wedding. I'm working with a financial advisor now to restructure our debt, and I can have it done in installments, but I can have it to you within 6 months. I felt tears prickling my eyes. Not because the money was coming back, though that was a relief, but because Michael was doing what Jake should have done from the beginning. He was taking responsibility. He was being honest. "I need to talk to my attorney," I said. "Of course. But Ashley, I'm sorry. For all of it, you deserved better." I met with David that afternoon. "Is this a trap?" I asked. "It could be, but I don't think so. Let me call their attorney and negotiate the terms. If Michael is genuinely willing to repay you in full, with written documentation of the payment schedule, I think we should take it." We went back and forth with Linda Rothschild for 3 days. Finally, we reached an agreement. Michael would repay me $26,000 in 6 monthly installments of $4,300 each, starting immediately. In exchange, I would drop the lawsuit and sign a non-disclosure agreement saying I wouldn't discuss the settlement publicly. I almost didn't sign the NDA. The idea of being silenced, of not being able to tell this story, made my blood boil. But David advised me that the NDA only prevented me from discussing the settlement amount and terms, not the facts of what had happened. "You can tell people that Jake lied to you and took your money," David assured me. "You just can't say how much or what the settlement terms are." That felt like a fair compromise. The first payment arrived 2 weeks later, $4,300 in my bank account, then another one a month later, and another. Meanwhile, I canceled the wedding. I called every vendor, the venue, the photographer, the caterer, the florist. Some of them were understanding. Some of them were angry. The venue tried to keep my deposit, but David sent them a letter, and they backed down. In the end, I recovered about 30% of what I'd paid them, which I put back into my savings account. I returned the engagement ring to Jake through David's office. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear his explanations, or his promises, or his pleas for forgiveness. What I wanted was to move forward. 6 months after Michael's first payment, the final installment hit my account, $26,000. I was whole again. I celebrated quietly, just me, Megan, and a bottle of wine at my favorite restaurant. I didn't feel happy exactly. I felt resolved, like I'd survived something difficult and come out the other side. "You're going to be okay," Megan said, raising her glass. "More than okay. You're going to be great." A year later, I was. I'd paid off the remaining balance on my condo. I'd rebuilt my savings. I'd started dating again, carefully, with clear eyes and firm boundaries. And I'd learned something crucial about myself. I was stronger than I thought. On the anniversary of the day Jake had screamed about his mother's blood sugar, I sat in Dr. Morrison's office and reflected on how far I'd come. "Do you have any regrets?" she asked. I thought about it. I regret not trusting my instincts earlier. I regret the money I spent on a wedding that never happened. But I don't regret ending it. Jake showed me who he was, and I believed him. And who was he? Someone who loved his mother more than he could ever love me. And I deserve someone who chooses me first. I didn't hear from Jake after that year. He never reached out. He never apologized. According to Megan, who still had mutual friends, he'd started dating someone new, a woman named Jessica who worked in HR. I hoped, for her sake, that he'd learned something from what happened with me. But I didn't hold my breath. What I did hold on to was the knowledge that I'd survived, that I'd trusted myself enough to walk away from a beautiful lie, that I'd fought for myself even when it was hard. And that, I realized, was the real happy ending.